Awesome. All right. Welcome to the launch event, everybody. So this is APM Club University Network launch, and with the agenda of speaking about how to break into product management, right? So before we sort of begin, I just wanted to talk, or give you more context about what is APM Club, how does it look like right now? So APM Club is a community of current and aspiring product managers to help create the best version of a product manager in you. So we have offerings like PM Skill Labs, PM Book Club, networking meetups, AMAs, and interview prep workshops. So it's a product by product managers for product managers looking to become their best versions, because together we can, right? So we already have a great traction in terms of 4,000 plus LinkedIn followers. We have a community of 500, around 500 early career PMs and PM leaders ranging from all companies, from the fans to early stage growing startups. So this is, I mean, this was a little bit about APM Club, but APM Club University Network is a sister community of APM Club that we are launching today. So let's just talk about the inspiration and how we sort of came about this idea. So Arunima founded a PM Club at Columbia, and I tried to do it as at UC Berkeley. And we kind of had the same pain points. It was painful to sort of go through all of the processes, all the administrative processes, sort of the overhead of like registering a club, going through university administration, and then actually thinking about how do you structure the club, how do you recruit people, how do you sort of reach out to speakers. There's so much of there's so much of pieces involved to it, right? So the idea was that why not create like a community of basically PM clubs across the world, and then that acts as a central repository wherein everybody could sort of learn from the clubs that have already participated. And that's how I came in contact with Arunima. So I reached out to her that, hey Arunima, you've already started a PM club at Columbia. Why don't you help me start one at Berkeley? And it was really useful in the sense of actually talking to her, how she did it, right? So it really helps to speak to somebody who's already done it before. So that was the inspiration behind the APM Club University Partner Network. And so let's talk a little bit about what exactly is it, right? So as I mentioned, it's a sister community of APM Club that aims to create a network of PM clubs and aspiring PMs across the world, right? So the goal is to create a central repository for all resources and opportunity to contribute and grow with each other, as I mentioned. And so our mission is that to inspire and cultivate PM leaders on every campus of the world with the right industry mentorship and resources to inspire aspirants through APMC University Network. So we'd love to have a PM club on every campus across the world, and that's sort of our dream that we wish to see, right? And we wish, and we are sort of all in to help whatever we can to do to make it actually happen, right? So let's look at what sort of kind of university clubs might exist and how can we help them, right? So there could be like one club. So one club could include like a registered university club, which is just sort of started out. And now they're trying to figure out how to build the resources or how to build the infrastructure to educate people about product management and basically cultivate leaders, right? So that could be one potential user for us. So we can sort of help with because we have already done it. So we are kind of we already know what goes through into making a club. So we can definitely help you with building resources, building a structure, and try to get the initial critical mass which you need to get your club successful, right? And then we have like established university club, which is like already established, which has a good member base. But they're still looking to consolidate and maybe probably expand and collaborate with other PM clubs, right? So again, that's the network we create really helps in terms of expanding other clubs and maybe potentially helping these clubs reach out to speakers from outside their community or who are not alums from their universities, right? And then don't worry, if you're just like an aspiring PM who's not a PM club leader, we've got you covered as well, right? So if you just plan, or if you have any kind of interest in product management, I think the best way to actually practice product management is opening a PM club. and you actually can go through this whole process of doing customer interviews, what your customers want, and then actually launching an MVP, right? And that's how we did launch this program as well. Went about talking to university clubs and seeing what are their pain points, and then sort of launched this program with some features, right? And that's how we plan to just keep iterating on it. So we would love to, even if you're just thinking about opening a club, feel free to reach out to us and we love to help you, right? Moving on. So how do we actually plan to do it? So currently we have three core offerings as part of the University Club Network. So one is access to mentor for each of the clubs. So we have a great community in the APM club who are, as I mentioned, early career PMs or like senior PMs from across the world from different companies, right? So we have great mentors who can mentor you as to how to actually go about if you're trying to launch a club, or if you're already an existing club, how can you sort of expand or consolidate your member base, right? And then because we have like this community of 500 early career product managers, there's sort of a ocean of opportunities in terms of like access to speakers, right? So you tell us like what kind of speaker you want, and I'm sure we'll have speaker for almost everything or any kind of skill that you want as a PM, or any kind of workshop that you want to conduct, right? And then there's obviously this notion of access to the community and access to this whole workspace wherein all the university club leaders, all members of different clubs across the campuses are present, right? So the clubs can collaborate and grow with each other, right? And so we'd love to have you join the Slack community. We'll share the links later. And if you're interested in this mission, interested in inspiring people to launch PM clubs, and if you sort of see the stream with us, feel free to email us, and we'd love to have you on board. All right. So yeah. So we already have partnered with, like I mentioned, we're launching this program, and we have three great universities as partners, right? So we have Columbia Product Management Club, Product Management Club at Cornell, and the Agile Product Management Club at University of Wisconsin-Madison, right? So now I'll let our partners take over and introduce themselves. Why don't we start with Columbia? Arnab?
Let me see. Yeah, so I'm a mentor for Columbia PM Club. I can introduce the club briefly right now if Prakhar hasn't joined yet.
Arnab.
Oh, sorry, Arnab hasn't joined yet.
But yeah, I could just speak about sort of what introduction they sort of told us, and what are they looking for, and then Arunima could just expand. So product management at Columbia University aims to help students in their journey to become successful product managers by connecting them with opportunities, providing resources to learn, inspiring a new generation of technologists, and helping them prepare for interviews. So that's sort of their vision. And yeah, Arunima, feel free to add to that.
No, this was perfect. They're having 3 to 4 major pillars on campus to teach students what product management is, identify problems that students have on campus, and provide events as well as experiential workshops for the same cause. So that was perfect. Prakhar.
Awesome. I see Anjane. Why don't you go ahead and introduce Agile Product Management Club?
Yes.
Hi, thank you, Prakhar, and thank you for the introduction and everything else too. So when starting Agile, we had two major goals in mind. A, creating a community of undergraduate and graduate students at the university who are passionate and motivated to break into product management. B, providing resources online and elsewhere to our students at the university in product. And so I'm very excited and very glad to be we are very excited and very glad to be partnering up with our APM Club, because this is I think we meet very similar goals, and we are looking forward to expand this into our big network with everybody. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So Anjane, he's the president of Agile Product Management Club. And do we have somebody from Cornell? Otherwise, do we have Rohan? All right. Yeah, I see your hand. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Anjane.
Sorry. Hi. Sorry. So Rohan couldn't make the call today, so I'm just substituting in for him. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, Prakar. My name is Yan Chen Zan, and I'm the Community Vice President of the Product Management Club at Cornell University. So our club was started about 10 months ago with the aim to not only expose our student body to the product management role, but to also provide them with the resources to develop their PM skill set and hopefully eventually acquire a PM opportunity in industry. We currently have an online community of about 250 students with an active Slack channel with 100 members. Since we've been established, we've hosted a lot of interview boot camps, events with product managers at Microsoft, resume reviews, book clubs, and a product enrollment event to recommend classes that we as officers and members of the club have found useful in shaping our view of tech and product. Going forward, we really look forward to hosting more events such as a Switch the Pitch product hackathon and a product kickoff week, where we'll not only talk about breaking into PM at Cornell, but also touch on representation in product management and breaking in from a non-technical background. As a club overall, we really commend the initiative that APMC and you, Prakar and Arunima specifically, are taking on to really bring universities together and connect PMs in industry with PMs in school. And we really just look forward to working and networking with everyone going forward. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the great introduction. And yeah, so for students joining in from these universities, and if they haven't already joined these clubs, yeah, a huge sort of shout out to these clubs, and yeah, do join them because these are great clubs, right? And so moving on. So moving on to the agenda for today, and we are talking about breaking into PM. So we have a great speaker lineup. So we've already done the university network and partner introduction. So firstly, we have Arunima, who would be sharing her story and talking about how to break into PM and talk about sort of how does a day in the life of APM look like. And then we have Neha, who will be talking about breaking into product management from a non-tech background and the different types of PM. Moving on, we'll have Simon talking about how to tailor your resume for product management, followed by Linda, who will be talking about how to ace your product management interviews from a hiring manager perspective. And we'll have time for Q&A. So so you can start posting your questions on Slido. So we already have the link in the chat. So start posting your questions, and we'll have time in the end to get to those questions. And yeah, so if you have any questions for any specific speaker, feel free to mention the name of the speaker in the question as well. All right, I'll hand it over to Arunima to take it now.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Great introduction, Prakar. And I don't know how many of you have seen this face before, but hello from Arunima. I'm going to talk about breaking into product management as an APM. And let's dig deeper into what specifically would that mean. So I'm going to be covering 4 major topics. My story, which is more about how I got into product management and what are some major things that I feel are important as an aspirant, which will dig deeper into how to stand out as an aspiring PM, what is the role of a PM, and how to nail your PM internships. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions towards the end of the talk, and I'll try to engage in the chat section as well. My story. So I am currently an associate product manager at Salesforce and a social entrepreneur as APM Club's founder. Super proud of everything that the team does. I have also been a machine learning researcher, a TEDx speaker, and recipient of Google Women Tech Makers Scholarship for my social impact leadership and CS academics. I was a total workaholic as a student, so I've been a PM intern 5 times at companies ranging from early stage startups to Azure machine learning. And I've also completed close to 5 to 6 internships in other areas, including software engineering, marketing, CS research, etc. So lots of imposter syndrome, lots of experiences as being an intern and an aspirant. My passions include solving problems at the intersection of computer science, social advocacy, and business intelligence. I also deeply care about diversity, inclusion in tech, and other areas of the world. as a founder of APM Club, I seek to create a closely knit support network of product managers with a growing community of, as everybody knows, 500 associate product managers, product leaders, and accessible product mentors around the world. And the reason I gave this tell me about yourself, quick tell me about yourself to everyone today as a part of my story is because I feel this section of preparing as an aspirant is the most important ever. I know a lot of us talk and prepare product design interviews, execution interviews, metrics interviews. Everybody knows all those books that we read. But this section of your interview where you prepare your pitch, you introduce yourself, you know what you're looking for, you know what your passions are, being assertive and very descriptive about yourself shows a lot to your interviewer about you as a potential PM. So this quick introduction of all the different aspects of Arunima was to dig deeper into how you should introduce yourself to an interviewer. Now let's get back to the actual Arunima introduction. So in my life as a woman in tech from a small city in India with limited resources to New York and Seattle, I've gathered a wealth of knowledge about my adversities that I strongly believe can be turned into opportunities to grow, which is precisely the reason I picked this picture instead of a pretty one for the slide. This was a picture taken at Mount Sinai Hospital across the street from Columbia, where I went for grad school. One of the scariest, loneliest, if it's a word, and adverse times of my life, where in that moment, I remember I thought I'd never be able to even get through the medical problem that I was facing and graduate grad school. With all the imposter syndrome, anxiety, financial worries, student and medical debt on my head within 6 months of landing in this new country from India. And yet, here I am, right? And if you ask me, that experience helped me stand out as an aspirant and grow in my career even more. Let's dig deeper into what I mean by that and learn about the 3 tips I learned from my experiences in life to own your story and stand out as an aspirant. I'm not able to. Okay. So, one of the things that I shared today was the story of going through this adversity, this medical issue within like the first semester at Columbia and all that stuff, right? And I think that's one of the reasons I was able to stand out as an aspirant. The first tip that I have for everybody is to plan ahead. And a lot of times plans don't work out, and that's okay. Like, you should always plan ahead that, you know, I want to go to grad school or I want to do X, Y, Z, because 3 years down the line, the vision that I have is that I want to be a product manager. So as an undergrad student, I said my vision is to be a product manager in the next 4 years, right? And I was like, okay, I was an ML researcher, super techie, studious, nerdy girl who had absolutely no clue about what business is. Like, I genuinely didn't even understand what a business model means, because I was a total techie. I was a computer science student, completely into machine learning and computer science. And that's when I planned ahead. I was like, okay, if I want to be a product manager in 4 years, I want to know what business is. So I'm going to go to grad school, not for a CS degree, but for management science engineering, which was a degree between business, the Columbia Business School and engineering school. So that's what I mean by planning ahead. Didn't work out as I planned, but just the fact that I had a vision and I had a goal and I was working towards it, I was able to mold and, you know, get to where I am despite the adversities and different experiences that I faced along my journey. So that's and while going through that journey, the first tip is plan ahead, know your strengths and unique story, capitalize on them and pitch away. So my pitch that I shared right before my real story was exactly how I presented myself, right? Nobody needs to know all the, sorry about that, about all the negative parts of your story. And in fact, all those negative parts, all those adversities can be great conversations to have in an interview or especially on a coffee chat. So that's the first tip. Plan ahead, but don't worry about the plans not working out. The action of planning ahead is only to keep you focused and goal oriented in your life. Know your strengths, your unique story, and capitalize on them so you pitch away, guys. The second tip is value genuine professional recommendations, not just referrals. A lot of times students focus on, can I get a referral from this person? Can I do XYZ? Like, can I get a referral from this person if I work with them? I think the second recommendation is to not think about referrals, but think about how many recommendations can I get on LinkedIn, for example. That was my success metric. How many people actually recommend me to work at their companies or ex-colleagues? And most of the internships that I got, honestly, I think 99.99 opportunities that I got was from my ex-colleagues or ex-managers who were really, encouraging, and they talked to their network and got me the next opportunity that I was getting. The third is be shamelessly persistent, network, and show that you can learn from failures. Just like I talked about all that adversity, in every interview, if they ask me, tell me about a time when you failed, when you did XYZ, I'm very genuine. I'm like, I completely F'd it up. And I learned XYZ from that, being analytical about yourself. What is a PM role? I think in my understanding, PM role is someone who's a collaborator between UX design, engineering, ops, sales, etc. All the different aspects of a product needs to come together, and you're the glue between these different aspects of a product team. Second is being the user's voice in a product team. You're the person who's going to talk about your user and be user obsessed or customer obsessed in a product team while the team is making decisions about what to build, what to build, why to build it. You'll be the one who'll be owning the what and why of the product, from literally being the user's voice in that team. And the third is being an innovative hat with new ideas and knowledge about competitors. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't talk about, and especially as an APM, I think that's a unique perspective that you can bring to the table. You're young, you use different types of products, you're not in the industry for a very long time, so you have this flexibility to play around and see what if I was working with Azure and I was literally dabbling with AWS SageMaker at some point during my last internship at Azure Machine Learning. And that's one unique perspective that I could bring as a young APM. So I feel that's another aspect to the job that that's important. Nailing your PM internship, I feel, is threefold: network within and outside the team early on. It's very important to not dig into your project in the first 2-3 weeks. Give yourself time to know the people you will work with for the next 10 to 12 weeks, and invest time in building those relationships early on. This would help your internship tremendously. Learn about the product, be young and innovative and organized. You have a young perspective, nail it through your new perspective. Learn about the product early on in the internship too. A lot of times interns just dig into this is the project I'm going to do. So I'm not going to learn about anything else in the product. I'm just going to focus on this project, but that's not going to set you to success overall in your internship. And then combating this imposter syndrome, value your uniqueness. I keep talking about your story, your uniqueness, your diversity quotient is going to be the most important thing in your internship to be successful in your internship. So I'm going to give the stage away to Neha now, who's going to dig deeper into how can you break into product management from a non-technical background.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arunima. Let me share. Prakar, it says that I cannot share my screen right now. Can you help me with that? It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
You should be able to do it now. Can you check again?
Yes, absolutely. It's working. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Can you all see my screen now? Great.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see so many faces after a long time. It's usually smaller meetings for my workday, but yeah, welcome. Now, before we dive in, quick disclaimer: everything I share here today are my personal opinions, and Google is not responsible for anything I say or share. Okay. Now, in terms of the agenda for today, we'll start by talking a little bit about me. I'll give you a quick overview of my career trajectory. Not as fascinating as Arunima's, definitely way more simpler, but I'm very happy to take any questions you have around that. Then we'll talk a little bit about an overview. Arunima gave a good overview about what being a PM is. I'll share a couple of slides from my perspective as well. And then we'll talk about how do you break into PM from non-technical background. And really it's about how I did it. There are multiple ways of doing it. I just want to share my experience of how I did it. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about what are the different types of product managers. This was a very interesting question that this group posed for me, and it made me think a little bit about it, like what does it really mean? But yeah, we'll go into deep dive into that as well. So a little bit about me. I grew up in India. I then pursued my undergrad in economics and statistics from Lady Shri Ram College in Delhi. After that, I joined management consulting. I worked for Essex Lake, which is a boutique consulting firm focused on financial services as clients. As part of my job, I travel a lot. It was a lot of fun. And then I also realized that consulting is not as sustainable as a career. When you're single and you love to travel the world, it was fun at the age of 20. But after that, I wanted to have a more long-term career. So I transitioned to business school, learned about PM as a career track. I had no idea that product manager was actually a role. So to test it out, I did my internship as a PM in Israel, in Tel Aviv, my favorite city, by the way, if you have not been there. It was fantastic. I really understood that I actually had a lot of skills already, having worked as a consultant to work as a PM. And it made me realize how much more impact I can create by actually shipping and launching products by being in one place for long. And therefore, I came back for my second year to Columbia, and I recruited for Google, and I then joined Google in 2018 as a product manager. More specifically, I am currently the lead PM for Google Analytics Intelligence, which is the machine learning wing of Google Analytics. For those who know what Google Analytics is, it'll make more sense. Okay, cool. So who is a product manager? There are multiple ways of defining it. If I had to choose a one-line description, it's basically a PM is someone who is responsible for the end-to-end user experience of the product. Now, what does end-to-end mean? I consider it to be from vision to landing of the features. So essentially, that includes a whole plethora of things, starting from understanding the user's pain point, knowing really what is it that the users want, to defining the hypothesis, validating the hypothesis, working with the designers to come up with the design component, doing a lot of user testing, and knowing identifying early on the kinks in your product and fixing them, working with the engineers to do a lot of that, and eventually launching it, working on the marketing strategy with the sales team, the finance team, and ultimately you make sure that your product lands well. Sometimes when you launch something, that's not enough. At least at Google, that's not enough. And in one smaller statement, a PM is like the CEO of your product, who is actually responsible for everything, but is not doing anything. So that's how I describe my job. I don't do anything. I just need to make sure that everyone does stuff, right? Okay. Now, what is being a product manager like day to day? I feel like this picture describes my life really well. Essentially, I have, I'm the person in the center, and there are tons of different raptors who want a piece of me, including, and there are multiple teams involved in this process. Now, the fun part really here is that you are the person who has answers to a lot of questions that different teams will ask of you. And in the process, you end up being the person who knows it all, But this also takes a lot of mental space and capability and your time, right? Because you have to be in a multiple places at the same time if you possibly could. This is as a social person and someone who enjoys working with people, I love it because I get to work with like 40 people on one project at the same time, right? So it's fun, but it may not be for everybody. If you are someone who likes to be in one corner and just focus all the time, then PMing is not really, will not give you that part of the the type of satisfaction. Now, a little bit about I assuming that this group understands more about being a PM already. We'll talk a little bit about the skills. Now, as I said, because you're working with different types of teams from UX, engineering, finance, sales, marketing, support, ideally you should know all of it. And that would be like the ideal PM. But realistically, it's not possible to know all of it, right? And that's why we have huge teams. So I chose just like 3 skills that I think are the top skills for a PM who is focused on an area like myself. Like I work on a consumer facing product, which is very ML heavy. So, from that perspective, keep in mind, every PM will have their different list of favorite skills. So first thing is understanding the user. It is absolutely important that you understand your user. As Arunima said, you are the voice of the user in the room. Therefore, and the way I do it is I meet with at least 2 users every single week. Irrespective of where I am in the world, how busy my week is, I will make sure I meet with 2 people. And that is all. And I may not have any relevant project to discuss with them, but I will meet 2 users every single week to understand, to have a constant pulse of the market, understand what people are saying about my product and how people are feeling about it. So that is my way of doing it. But yeah, you have to be the voice of the user in the room because no one else is doing it. Not the engineers, not the designers. Some companies have the user research teams, but again, it depends on the size of the company. Even at Google, sometimes our teams don't get funded by a user research team. So it could be just you who's doing it. Second is communication. I cannot stress enough that how much communication is important to succeed as a PM because often it's funny, like often early on when I joined Google, I used to be very frustrated when let's say an engineer would do something and then I would be like, hey, it was a week ago we had discussed this, what's the update on this? And he's like, oh, I finished it an hour after we talked. And I was like, but why didn't you tell me about it? And then he was like, oh. So, and I very soon learned that, okay, communication may not be the strength for everyone on the team, which was very different from me compared to consulting. Like in consulting, everybody was excellent at communication. That was one of the hiring criteria, right? But in tech, it works very differently. So people expect that as the PM, you will be the one who will be the glue that will keep everyone attached together and be the one who will communicate between different teams as well. So it's absolutely important to be successful and make sure that you're not working in a silo. Finally, prioritization. So another big aspect of my job is that as a PM, I always have a running list of how can I improve my product? What is the next thing I want to build? Now, these ideas come from lots of places, right? They come from my interactions, but I also get input all the time from my different team members, engineers, salespeople, marketers, Twitter, and even my gardener. Like everyone has ideas that they want to share with the PM. Now, what do? It is the PM's job to basically have that running list and constantly prioritize, like what is important right now, or maybe for the next year or so for your product. It is your job to do it. And there are multiple frameworks, etc. In terms of that I use for the prioritization. I'm happy to talk about them if you guys care about it. But you have to be the person who's very good at prioritizing. Otherwise, you will not be on the driver's seat. You will basically be just following whatever your manager is asking you to do. Now, notice here that I did not bring up engineering or coding as skills as a requirement here. And that is a very good segue into the next topic, that why do I believe that you do not need to know how to code to succeed as a product manager? So first of all, let's define what does non-technical really mean. as I was thinking about it, I realized that people mostly use the word non-technical background to talk about someone who does not have a CS degree for their undergrad or has not worked as a programmer, right? So if you fall in that category, you are classified as non-technical, and I was non-technical to some extent, I guess. Now, why does that make us afraid, right? Why does that prevent us from applying for PM positions? I think there are primarily two reasons, and there could be more. Feel free to chime in. But I think one is the coding interview. Lots of companies like Google, especially, has a coding round where you need to do well. And at Google, all PM roles are technical PMs. We don't have a discrimination between the two. So you need to be technical at Google. So that's one aspect that I think people with non-tech backgrounds are afraid of. And the second aspect is the ability to understand your engineers. There's always this insecurity that will I be able to work well with these super smart engineers that I have in my team. Now, let me share with you a very quick story about how what happened with me around this. So I knew how to code, luckily, because in my consulting role, we did a lot of data analysis. So I could code in SAS and SQL, but not of any of the development languages. But during the MBA, I focused on learning Python, and then I also built a lot of ML models, so that I sort of had the fundamentals needed. But I was still not a badass coder, right? So when I was going through the team matching process, I met with my engineering TL, tech lead, and I asked him that, they gave me the offer, and I was like, but why do you want to work with me? Like, I don't understand this massive, complex infrastructure as well as someone with a CS background would understand. He said that, Neha, that is exactly the reason why I want to work with you. Because you don't understand all of the infrastructure and the CS stuff, you will do your job and you will let me do my job instead of stepping on my toes. So I was like, that makes sense. So it turns out that, he had prior experiences where PMs who had CS background, they would focus on optimizing the infrastructure and making engineering decisions instead of doing their job, which is talking to the users and working on the strategy and the vision and so on and so forth. So yeah, so I think engineers are very happy to work with you irrespective. They don't care as long as you let them let the team work well. So just some tactical solutions. If you are someone from a non-tech background, I would say learn a coding language. There's no way around it. You don't need a 4-year engineering degree, but just learn to code something as simple as Python or just anything, because that will help you understand how engineers think, right? How do you write functions? How do libraries work? How does APIs work? How do you optimize if there's high QPS? Like just stuff like that, you will understand the language and that'll give you a lot of confidence. Second is ask questions. No question is dumb, and you should just not, don't be shy. Ask questions. That's I used my newbie hat for like 6 months at Google to ask any question. And trust me, never have I ever felt asking the question that, oh shit, I shouldn't have asked. There've often been times when people would be like, oh yeah, we didn't think about this. And I wouldn't ask fancy questions, very basic things, right? So you'll be surprised. So ask questions. And the third thing is focus on learning. So given how much technology is evolving, I can't emphasize enough on it's important to be humble, accept your gaps, and focus on learning, right? I still take a lot of classes at Google and make sure that I am abreast with the latest technology, and it has helped me often. Like for example, my product right now focuses on natural language processing, and that was a space I had not worked on before. So there was a 4-month period where I took a lot of NLP classes and I attended tons of conferences. And towards the end of it, coincidentally, when we had to make a very big infrastructure decision about assessing the quality of the output that we were throwing through the search bar, which is where we were using the NLP technology, I was able to help the engineering team make decisions about it, right? And that gave me a ton of confidence that, okay, all of my hard work did not go for waste, right? So constantly focus on learning. Cannot emphasize that enough. Finally, a little bit about what are the different types of PMs, right? I'll go over it quickly and then give you my personal opinion. From the research I did, it seems that you could largely categorize PMs based on 2 things. One is the prior background, and second is personality. So when we say prior background, I basically mean usually people after finishing their undergrad or or graduate finishing their masters, they end up working in something extensively, right? So either it could be consulting like business, or it could be engineering, marketing, data science, or UX design. Any of these prior backgrounds could make you a very good PM, because ultimately as a PM, you have to know a little bit of each of these, right? So what ends up happening is, if you have worked a lot in UI, UX, let's say as a PM, you end up focusing a lot more there because that is your strength, right? So ideally, I feel like a good balance of a PM would be someone who has exposure to a little bit of everything, so that you appreciate every aspect, right? Not just design aspect because you were a former designer. Everything is important for a product to be successful. It's not one or the other. So that's one. And another type of PMs could be based on the personalities, right? You could be a PM who gets shit done. You probably had, let's say, no particular background, but you are someone who is an executioner. Like, you can get shit done. That skill in itself is highly, highly valuable, right? Especially because as a PM, if you're working with like 30 to 40 people on one project, there's a lot of herding required, getting people to move and pay attention, program management required. So that will come handy. There are some PMs who are visionaries. So if you're someone who loves to place a bet on how the future will turn out, and you do that by interacting in the industry a lot, reading a ton of books, that's very, very valuable as well, right? Someone who can foresee what are the potential ups and downs. So yeah, so overall, but my personal opinion is that there is no type of a PM as such. So I wouldn't worry about boxing yourself into any of these categories. It's really just making sure that you have some strengths and you're aware of it, and you can pitch those strengths as you apply for PM jobs, right? And for the other things that you're not good at, you should just be open to learn and to learn about them, and build that into your skill set, right? Cool. That was my time, I think, and I'll hang out for the Q&A session at the end. Thank you so much, everyone.
We have Simon next. He'll be talking about how to tailor your resumes for PM opportunities, because we all know how important that first step of getting the right interview through your resume is. So I'll hand it off to Simon.
All right, so can you all hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay. A little bit of background about me. I started off as an engineer, studied electrical engineering, did a little bit of computer science stuff. Started off as an engineer working on robotics, semi-robotic equipment that went into the manufacturing industry. Then moved into the systems engineering kind of role, and then technical program management kind of role. And then right now I have a startup called Resume Puppy, which literally helps you make good-looking resumes. Here I manage the product side of things. So it's been a transition from a very technical role through the waters to the product side. And yeah, getting to the topic here about making a resume, right? The internet is actually flooded with a lot of information around like how to make your resume, what's good, what's bad, and oftentimes to an extent that it confuses people. So I'll just keep it short and simple around what I, as an interviewer, or most interviewers would look for in a resume, right? And especially, I'm assuming the crowd here is relatively like out of college or a few years out of college, right? So one main thing in the resume that people look for is credibility, right? Whatever information you put, how credible it is. That's the question that interviewers ask when they look at the resume, or recruiters ask. And for that to happen, your resume should narrate a story. It should not be, it should kind of, there's a lot of resumes that come across that are very disjoint in content. And by disjoint, I mean, when I read it from start to finish, which most people actually don't read it from start to finish, it doesn't tell a very cohesive story around, okay, yeah, this is my specialty and this is what I'm trying to do and this is the job that I'm trying to get, right? There are, like, you don't literally mention it that way, but there are subtle ways where you can, tune the reader's mind towards it. And one of, like, a few ways here is, and this is not unheard of. You research your job descriptions well, and then extract keywords, but it doesn't stop there. Most people advise to just extract keywords, but you should also extract context. Extract context around, like, what kind of work is required, and list out everything that you did in your life, like literally everything you did in your life, be it in college or projects, or if you have some experience in your experiences, and everything, right? And then there's certain ways where, like, when you look into this and when you do your job descriptions, your sort of experience research from your own life, there's you'll find plenty of evidence where, you have demonstrated certain context that they need. For example, led a team to do something, or used a certain tool to do something, right? Like if it's like a front-end development work, if a specific tool they mentioned is not used by you, you still know that it's more of a front-end development work, which you might have used another tool for. So you have a certain context match there, right? So after that, what you do is you take all these context matches and then make your resume. Most people do this mistake of just stuffing the resume with keywords, which makes it even more disjoint. Because now you have a bunch of keywords and it doesn't resonate with the actual experience. You might get past the ATS, but then it won't take you beyond the recruiter in most cases, and in almost all cases, it won't take you beyond the interview. So I mean, if there is one piece of advice that I want to give, it's look for the context match over there, not just the keyword match. Like with that, I'd like to sort of introduce, like, if I can share my screen here. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this is Resume Puppy. So Anish Hegde and I created Resume Puppy with the sole reason of helping people with all these things, right? And it's an ongoing journey. Our first mission was to help people with the formatting part, and the second mission was to help people with advanced AI that helps with the content. So as far as the formatting is concerned, I am exposing this tool to you to say that the Resume Puppy is entirely run by LaTeX. So but you don't need to code anything. So you basically have a very neat graphical user interface over here that you input your details in very simple manner, and then you kind of get a well formatted LaTeX resume sort of rendered. This is just some placeholder resume that I just created here, putting my name on it. But yeah, and the next thing we are trying to do is to introduce features over here that kind of gives intelligence around the mistakes people do and help them correct that, not just from a format standpoint, but also from a context standpoint as well, moving ahead when we have all our natural language processing tools in there. So yeah, just wanted to introduce this. If you are worried about the format part, come to Resume Puppy, create your resume over there. This has proven to be ATS friendly. Recently I got told that one of the people who used our resume got an APM position in Instacart. There have been at least 2 people who got interview calls from Uber, for Uber APM roles using Resume Puppy as resume. I'm not saying Resume Puppy did all the work for them, but the point is if you don't have any referrals, if you don't have any recommendations, getting through the regular door, passing through the ATS itself is a big task. And a tool that helps you alleviate that problem goes a long way in getting you into some recruiter's hands. So feel free to use Resume Puppy as of now. And every week we are releasing new features over here. We're trying to improve our product to help you with more keywords research, keywords discovery, and eventually also context discovery as well. So back to you, Arunima.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Simon. Next, we have Linda, who is a director of Microsoft Garage. And her event with us previously was one of the most popular ones. Like, she has amazing interview tips. So tune in for Linda's interview tips for all of you.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I am thrilled to be back here. And I realize that we're short on time, so I'm gonna let me make this go slideshow mode, and I'll zip through this really fast. Some of it's going to be a lot of the stuff that we talked about before, and I've got 4 additional things. One additional question that was asked of me is like, what do I specifically look for in an interview? So I've got 4 tips for that as well too. But just to give you a little bit of background on myself, my name is Linda Thackeray. I'm the director of the Garage. I just recently relocated from Boston to Ireland, so I'm running a garage space and programming here. And I've been at the company for over 22 years, and I also run an internship program. So I've interviewed hundreds of prospective interns coming into Microsoft. And so this is just kind of like of all of those that I've interviewed, these are some of the things that I have found that are most important with regards to preparing yourself for the interview loop itself. Now, there's 1,000 different things that you can, there's all kinds of interview tips that you'll be able to find out online. So, and I would highly recommend that you spend some time and actually go through and look at those interview tips. I'm not going to go into a lot of those details there, but I'm just going to go into just 4 interviewing tips that I have. And it's all based around this: proper preparation prevents poor performance. So first of all, I just want to say everything that's been said up to this point, yes, 100,000 times yes. I know that we talked about preparation, we talked about what a product manager is, all of those things I completely resonate with. And so yes on all of those things. And when it comes to the actual interview itself, there's 4 key pieces of being prepared that I'll zip through really quick. And the first thing is you got to practice. You got to practice. I would say find yourself, a trusted advisor, find some friends, family members, go out online and look for mock interview questions for the role that you're actually going to be interviewing for, and actually practice saying answers to those questions out loud. And the reason for that is, and this is to go with another thing that was said as well too, is there's a job description that you're applying for that has specific skills and qualifications that people are looking for when they interview you. And so having the ability to actually weave those things into your storyline and connect those things to the things that you're already working on can actually really help you and give you a leg up in the interview loop. But you got to practice those things. Sometimes I think, I'm just going to remember this when I go in there and I don't have to practice. But the truth is you got to practice those things. You got to talk about them out loud. Okay, the second thing is, preparation tip number 2 is you got to do your research. This one always surprises me because, I can tell very early in an interview loop if the person I'm talking to has done the research on the company that they're interviewing with. At a minimum, you should at least know who the CEO is of the company that you're interviewing with. And the more that you know, like, for example, know what the mission is, know what the vision is. If you do a little bit of research, you can find out what the strategy is, what the big bets are. And then all of that information, you can weave that into the conversation that you have with the interviewer, and that will help kind of build a rapport with them. So do your research on the company before you go into the interview loop. And it's shocking how many people actually don't do that. So don't be that person. Okay, preparation tip number 3 is you got to come with questions. Like almost every interviewer that I know I do this, everyone that I know does this. We always leave a good 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the time for you to ask questions. And so it's so frustrating as an interviewer when I leave that time for you to ask me questions, and then, you know, I get the answer of like, oh no, I don't, everything's been answered already. Even if you don't care what the answers are, I would say you got to go into an interview with a list of questions that you're going to ask. Even if you ask the same question 4 times, you got to get prepared to ask questions. You know, ask me what it's like to be a woman in the high-tech industry. You know, ask me what my vision for the company is. Ask me how I view my role in relation to the role that you're interviewing for, and how we would interact with one another. All of those things can really, really help. And I would say, make sure that you're coming in with a list of questions. Okay, the last preparation tip that I will give you is you gotta be prepared to listen. And I know this may sound trivial, but sometimes, you know, interviewing can be kind of a scary thing. And especially if you've practiced, and you have these questions and answers, you've got these answers baked in your brain for how you're gonna, you know, respond to some of the questions that are asked. And sometimes you get so dead set on like, I'm gonna make sure that I get this answer out, that we actually forget to listen to the verbal and the nonverbal cues that are happening in the room. And so a lot of times the interviewers are looking for specific things, and they will actually guide you to the answer that they want you to give them by virtue of the clues that they're giving you. And, so, and if you're not prepared to listen to those things while you're in the interview loop, sometimes you can miss those. So preparation tips: practice. Do your research on the company before you come in. Number 3 is got to come prepared with questions. And then the last thing is prepare yourself to actually listen to verbal and nonverbal cues during the interview. Okay, really quick. What specifically do I look for? Now, a lot of these things I'm going to show you, we've already talked about today, but I just want to just really quickly touch on them. I personally, when I'm talking to prospective candidates, especially in the PM role, is their communication skills. You know, are they able to articulate cleanly the answers to the questions that I have for them? You know, is there a lot of bloviating? Is there a lot of extra fluff? You want your you want your answers to be authentic. You want them to be crisp. You know, how well are you communicating? That's a really big thing, especially when it comes to the PM role. The second thing I look for is how well do I think that you're going to do well with teamwork? You know, can you collaborate? I ask the same question with every single interview that I do, and that is, tell me about the best team you've ever worked with. What made it so great, and what role did you have on that team? And what I'm looking for is like, how well did you collaborate? How well were you able to deal with challenging situations with colleagues? You know, how well were you able to work together to move forward on your project? The best things that you're ever going to do in life are going to be done with other people. And so we're really looking for, you know, are you going to be able to collaborate well with others? Okay, the next thing is like driving for results. Are you able to work in ambiguous situations, pick up those things that are important, and make sure no matter what, you're driving those things forward? Another thing that was said is like, a lot of times you're not actually doing the work, but you're having to drive other people to do that work as well too. So how well are you, you know, I will always ask about projects and talk about situations about where maybe you missed a deadline, or a deadline was coming up and you knew that you may not make it. What did you do? And I'm looking for, you know, how well you drove for the results that you achieved. So that's the third thing. And then the last thing is do you have customer focus? Again, another thing that was said as well too is like, I'm going to ask you questions about, you know, tell me about a time when you worked with a customer and how did that work out? And what I'm looking for specifically there is like, did you have the customer in mind when you did what you did? Or was it something that you thought about the customer, you know, if that was a secondary thing? So making sure that you can demonstrate clearly that, that you do have a customer focus can be key as well too. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop, and I think we're going on to question and answer.
Yes. Feel free to ask questions in the Slido link provided. And I think we'll do wrapping up in the end of the event. Let's open up to questions, Iris.
Okay. Hi, I have a question.
We are actually going to do it through Slido. I was just going to post the link again, if you don't mind asking there, and we'll do it that way. Here's the link for everyone who needs it. I'll share my screen.
Yes.
Okay, can everyone see this? Yes, okay. Awesome. So the first question I have answered already, but the recording of the session will be shared with the participants through our Slack channel and YouTube. Yeah, so it'll be posted. This is answered.
We might need to ask for all the speakers' consent before, so we're not 100% sure of YouTube yet, but you'll definitely get it on the Slack channel if you're a part of the community. And feel free to join the community, connect with Iris and Prakhar to get the joining link or our LinkedIn page.
Okay, so the next question is for Neha. You work as a consumer product manager and still meet 2 users every week. What are some channels you use to find the right users to talk to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's the hardest part of my job right now, primarily because if I was like, let's say a PM for Uber, I would just be taking cabs day in and day out to find people to talk to. But I'm a PM of Google Analytics, which is which only people who have like a website or are running a serious business use it. So the way I do it is first I reached out. Initially, I used to work closely with my UX research team, and I use them for long-term projects where I can wait for like 2 months to finish a UX research study. But personally now, all I do is I look at for particular features that I need feedback for, I look at the data of usage. So I will then pull out the top 500 users based on a certain metric. Like let's say I will think of a metric as how many people submitted a search query for my search product. So, and then for those users, if they have opted in to be reached out for feedback, Google has a privacy setting whereby users can opt in to provide feedback. If they've opted in, then I send out a mass email to those set of top users who have opted in, telling them that, hey, I would love to talk with you. And and for those who respond, I set up a conversation with them. And in return, we offered them some gift card just as a gesture of thank you. And usually the response rate on those mass emails are about like 10%. So that's also not very high. So it does take a lot of emailing sometimes. Does that help?
Yes, it was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the next question is for Arunima. So how did you know you wanted to be a product manager, and how did you start prepping for this career outside of your MSME program?
So I think I was an undergrad and I was working. I had this. My parents are doctors and my dad is a neurosurgeon, and I spent a lot of my childhood in hospitals. And there was this one specific ward where there were a lot of schizophrenic patients, and I had this burning passion to solve this problem for schizophrenic patients. And I wanted to use technology because that's what I was in as a student. And I think the way my passion for PM, or my exploration for PM started, was that I had this burning passion to solve this problem. I had no clue how to, and I researched and I taught myself what AI is. I didn't have a lot of background, but I knew enough to know that this problem could be solved by this particular technology. Applied to Stanford, went there. I don't know how magically they accepted someone like me, but I went there and I worked for that project on campus. And I got introduced to entrepreneurship because it was an entrepreneurial program for which we were building this product. And towards the end, we had to pitch. That's when I came to know that I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, I love solving problems. I'm a technologist, but I still like the problem solving part of it, the what and why, not the how. And how is mostly what engineers build. So I realized I want to be an entrepreneur, but I also need financial security, or not security, just didn't want to be an entrepreneur right off the bat. And I found product management is this one job that in my head was an entrepreneur who gets a salary from a company. Yay, I'm going to be a PM. Eventually, honestly, that was like sophomore year 2015 me, who had this big idea. And eventually I went and talked to a lot of people. Neha was one of them. When she was at Columbia Business School, we were actually talking to room. And at some point, I had so many conversations with so many people who work in the field, discovered more about it, and eventually figured out that maybe it was not the idea that, as I said, I planned ahead and I wanted to be a PM, but it was not exactly 100% what I imagined. But eventually I talked to a lot of people, I networked, and I realized, understood what the career was, and just kept transforming my path according to that. But that's what made me interested about the career, and just taking a chance on me, and just being ruthlessly, persistent, shamelessly persistent, and just sending messages to people like Neha, Linda, Simon, everybody. That's how I learned, and that's how I got interested.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is for Neha. For a person with a non-CS engineering background without any prior product management internships, how do you crack or get an interview at FANG companies?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I was just thinking that what are alternatives of internships? Now, I'm assuming you bring up FANG because these are all the large tech companies, and as you would expect, they look for some sort of prior experience. If you don't have internships under your belt, you can build your own stuff. You can build an app on your own and launch it, right? You don't have to work for someone else. So I think when these companies say that they are looking for prior experience, they're not looking for you to have worked for any particular company. It's more about, have you build something or not? So what I would do is, you try, build something of your own, write a PRD, which is a product requirement document, do some design work, and build a very basic app if needed, or a website, and see what that feels like. And you don't have to do it on your own. You can do it with some fellow friends and, form a team and do it. And another thing is, it doesn't just have to be a product. It can also be something in the field of, machine learning. Like, there are tons of data available out there for free. So if that is a field you're interested in, get your hands dirty and get some experience. So that would be my advice if you don't have any product management internships. Now, of course, this question is very interesting because you can always do an internship even tomorrow. Like, you can start tomorrow, right? So don't think that if you've not done it so far, that's the end of the game. You can still do an internship while applying for a job in parallel. Like, there is nothing stopping you.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question is also for you, Neha, but if any of the other panelists want to answer this as well. What are the platforms or tools and approach you go with for prioritization of ideas/features?
Yeah, I'm happy to listen to what Linda and Simon have to say, and I can pitch in after that.
Yeah, I can jump in there. I know that for here, there's a wide range of tools that different PMs use. There's nothing that's dictated, I think, across the PM role here at Microsoft. It may be the same with Google as well too. Like, some people use projects, some people use just plain Excel, some people use, I even know a PM that uses sticky notes all over her keyboard and things like that. So listen, one of the things I found, at least for myself, you got to find what works for you, and what works for you may not work for somebody else. So for me, what works for me is a notepad with little check boxes next to them, and then I check things off as I move down through things. But it just depends on what works for you in terms of prioritization and things like that. And there's also team norms go into that as well too. Like, certain teams are going to use certain tools, based on legacy. But it is different based on team, and it is different based on what your work style is too. So it's variable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, so just want to touch on the approach side. There's platform, tools, and approach, right? That's been asked. Personally, there's a lot of things that are very intuition based when it comes to approach, right? Sometimes it's very clear, what the first priority is based on like the experiences that you had, right? And the experience you had from talking to so many people comes down to what is the bottom line of this for the company? What is the bottom line of it for like the finances? What's the bottom line when it comes to how different it is from what the team is already working on? There's a lot of considerations here, and those sort of parameters are different in different products and workflows even within the product. So it all depends on the right combination on, like, if it's the end of quarter, let's say it's a hardware company, right? Let's say, I don't know, maybe Tesla or something. And it's the end of quarter. and then you have a bunch of probably equipment to fix, but you also have the numbers to meet, right? At that point in time, the priority becomes pushing out as many units as possible to meet the numbers, right? And if it comes at, and you have to do a cost benefit analysis of actually spending that time on fixing the equipment, if it actually pumps up the numbers, or like it's another thing you can deal with next quarter, right? There's all these things. This is just one simple example, but there are thousands of such things that go into play.
Yeah. And just to add to that, for those of you who like frameworks, I sometimes use this RICE framework, RICE, where basically it stands for reach, impact, confidence, and effort. So let's say if you have 4 different things to do in terms of features, ideas, I would assess them across each of those. Reach being how many users will it impact, impact basically being what is the impact on the company's metrics like revenue, cost, etc. Confidence being how confident are you that even if you address this, you work on it, you will actually address the core problem. And effort is of course, resources and effort, time and money and so on and so forth. That has been very helpful for me. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. If it's okay with the panelists, we just want to answer 2 more questions maybe. Is that okay? Sorry, we went a little bit over time.
That's okay.
Okay, awesome. The next question is for Linda, more specifically towards PM at Microsoft. Is it necessary to have an MBA to be a PM at Microsoft? Also, is the PM mostly called a program manager? Maybe you can explain the difference, if there is a difference.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is not necessary to have an MBA to be a PM at Microsoft. I know really great PMs that are MBAs, and I know really great PMs that are not. I do not have an MBA. In fact, I don't even have a tech background. I have a little bit of a non-traditional background when it comes to somebody in the high-tech industry. My background is actually in political science, shockingly so. And I've been a PM my entire career at Microsoft. So no, I would say that's not necessary. I think the other things that we talked about in terms of, the skills, the attention to detail, the drive for results, the customer obsession, the, being able to dealing with ambiguity. That was another thing I wanted to talk about as well too, is like a lot of times the program manager or the product manager really kind of lives in that ambiguous state, and being able to be successful and keep a clear mind and moving forward in that is important too. So I would say all those skill sets are necessary for being PM, but not necessarily having an MBA. It is true that Microsoft actually calls the role program manager, and that is, I think companies outside of Microsoft would actually use the term product manager. At Microsoft, it is program manager. And that is actually a title that's very, it's variable as well too. Depending on the team that you're working for, your role may be very different. In one role, you may be writing specs. In another role, you may be, directly interacting with the customer. In another role, you may be doing some design work, and all have the program manager title. So depending on the group that you're in, will determine exactly what the role is, but it is program manager, and it's very similar to the product manager outside of the company as well.
Awesome, thank you. And then the last question is for Simon. So can you give an example of how to find context?
Yeah, there's context around technical stuff, and that's context around non-technical stuff, right? An example for context around non-technical stuff is the company probably has a history of having a relatively intense work environment, and they mention, on their requirements that you need to have exposure to working with, making decisions in the absence of data all the time or most of the time, right? Now, this is something very sort of subjective that they've thrown in their requirements. Now, how do you make it roll into what you're trying to say through your resume, right? And it's not literally like I made, decisions in the absence of data. It's like you bring out how you made a decision, like led the decisions for like XYZ, and then this happened, and then with limited data, like. So this is going to be very specific to what you did, but then there are ways where you can like convince through a bullet point how you made a decision in the absence of data. in a very specific manner that is trustable, right? So that's the kind of context finding that I'm talking about on the non-technical side. On the technical side, there's like I mentioned, if there's like a demonstration of excellence in databases or something like that being mentioned, then you look for all the database tools that you have worked with, not necessarily the ones exactly what they are asking for, preferably those, but if you haven't worked with them, look for parallels in your world that you've worked with, and then put more emphasis into those when you're making your resume for those positions. Now, one point here is it does bring up this problem of if you spend a lot of time to customize your resume for a particular role, then you'll not hit scale, right? It's very hard to apply to like 50, 60 positions if you spend like 2 hours for every position. So for that, you basically take, a bunch of job descriptions and then, figure out a median between those. That's one of the tools that we are actually working on Resume Puppy as well. How do you be more specific? Like you bring more job descriptions to Resume Puppy, but you'll still be able to hit scale because we want to make the whole prioritization of the bullet points and matching of the skills more automated, so that you can bring the job description and we know everything that you have given us, and we immediately match the bullet points that are more relevant to those job descriptions and generate a resume and deliver it on Chrome through a Chrome extension. So that's one of the things that we are already working on. That will make your life much more easier in finding more context and matching your resume to the context. But it'll take a couple months to release that, but just letting the cat out of the bag there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so the final question is just, how do I join APMC? We'll have a slide towards the end, but also I know that Prakhar has posted the Slack channel. Feel free to join that. Yeah, here's the slide. You can use the QR code to join the Slack channel. You can follow APMC on LinkedIn and also visit our website if you want to learn more about the organization. With that being said, Arunima, do you want to?
Yes, so closing on this amazing event, thank you so much all our panelists to be here with us. And I personally learned a lot, and I learned from every event and all these amazing speakers. I think the three problems that APMC we realize, the problem statements that we've identified through our user research that students on campus feel, but student PM clubs on campus are not able to provide to students is industry mentorship, access to PM speakers who are SMEs in specific skills, and peer mentorship from other club leaders and members across the country. These are the exact three problem statements that we're trying to solve through the UniNet launch. Industry mentorship, access to PM speakers who are SMEs in specific fields, and peer mentorship. For individual aspirants who are joining us, who are not a part of PM clubs today, there are three things. Network on campus by joining these PM clubs, by joining the UniNet ecosystem. I, as a Columbia student in engineering and business, did not have access or did not even know about a PM club that was super, super awesome in another SPS school. So it's important for you to network, be a part of our community, and network within your clubs. Attend our interview prep events like this one that we're going to have through UniNet. Iris is going to be leading that initiative, and we'll bring more information. The third thing is enhance your PM background by starting a PM club or an initiative within your existing on-campus club, and let us help you. We've identified the problems, we have the solutions, and we have the network to help you solve those issues. And believe it or not, all the APMs that I've met, 99 or 98% of them have started some kind of initiative or club on campus. So it really teaches you as a student how to lead a product, how to solve problems by and executing, as everybody here talked about. So welcome to University Network by APMC. Join us, and thank you so much to all our panelists to be here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys. Awesome.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.